welcome to the Deep Dive. If you're tuning in from the English with Narayana channel, welcome. It's great to have you here. We're diving into something interesting today, and don't worry, we'll be speaking clearly and simply to make it easy for you to follow along and practice your English. Got any thoughts or answers to the questions we throw out there? Hit us up in the comments. We love hearing from you.
Absolutely. So glad to be connecting with the English with Narayana community. We're hoping you'll find this deep dive both interesting and helpful for your English learning.
All right, so today's deep dive is a bit of a personal one for me. We're going to be talking about Alice in Chains. I'll admit they're my absolute favorite band, and luckily for us, there's a ton of great information out there about them. We've got details from their Wikipedia page, of course, and we're also tapping into a really in-depth book called Alice in Chains, The Untold Story by David DeSola.
Yeah, we've got a lot to work with here. Should give us a pretty solid picture of, well, how things went down.
Exactly. And what we really want to understand today is how Layne Staley, the iconic singer of Alice in Chains, well, how he learned to sing. It's a pretty fascinating journey, and we're going to be exploring the key moments, the influences, all the things that shaped his truly unique voice. Ready to jump in?
Let's do it. And you know, it's interesting, Layne's first connection to music wasn't about singing at all.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The book talks about this pivotal moment back in 1975. Elton John was playing a concert in Seattle, and Layne's dad took him. It was Layne's first ever concert experience. I mean, can you imagine seeing Elton John live for the first time?
Talk about an experience that could leave a mark. And later on, as the book mentions, Layne even said that it was in the 4th grade when he realized he wanted to make music his job. So that seed was planted pretty early on.
It was. And he actually started out exploring different instruments. First, it was the trumpet, then he moved on to the cornet, and then, and this is important, he picked up the drums. You know, the book talks about how he'd listen to his favorite rock bands through headphones and try to replicate those sounds. So even before singing, he was really engaging with music by listening and imitating, kind of like learning by ear, right?
Absolutely. That learning by ear thing, it's huge, especially for musicians starting out. It's all about developing that sense of rhythm and melody, even before you dive into reading sheet music or anything like that.
So true. Okay, so now comes the really interesting part, how he actually got into singing. The book says that around 15, Layne was feeling pretty confident about his ability to copy other singers. That's when he really decided he wanted to give it a shot himself.
So that desire to sing, it kind of stemmed from his time as a drummer, from all that imitating he was doing. It's like he was practicing without even knowing it.
In a way, yeah. So he was playing drums in a band at the time, and he really wanted to sing just one song.
Yeah.
But the singer basically shut him down, said something like, "Drummers don't sing." You believe that? It's funny how sometimes being told you can't do something only makes you want to do it more.
Yeah, for sure. That kind of negative feedback, it can push people, makes them want to prove everyone wrong. And sometimes it leads them to achieve things they might not have even considered otherwise.
And in Layne's case, it totally did. That refusal led to a bit of a fight, and here's the pivotal moment. Layne traded his entire drum set for a delay effect, a microphone, and a mic cord. That delay effect, by the way, it's what makes the voice sound kind of echoey. Anyway, he started practicing at home, and he even admitted later that he was horrible at first. So it wasn't like this natural talent that just blossomed overnight. He really had to work at it.
It's a good reminder that, well, anything worth learning takes effort, right? Whether it's singing, learning a new language, whatever. We all start somewhere, and practice is key.
Couldn't agree more. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Layne's stepbrother, Ken Elmer, he was a huge factor in getting him involved with the band as a singer. Ken suggested that Layne try out for a band at Shorewood High School, and Layne's initial response was, "Well, I'm not a singer." Which is funny, right? Because he clearly wanted to sing, had been practicing, but still had those doubts.
It's that whole thing about wanting something versus feeling ready to actually put yourself out there. Happens to all of us.
Totally. So the band was called Sleaze. And at his audition, which went down at the guitar player's parents' house, the band was actually super impressed. They even commented that he looked like Vince Neil, the singer of Mötley Crüe, who were pretty huge at the time.
So even if his singing was still a work in progress, his look, maybe the energy he brought, it was already making an impact.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. And get this, even though his voice was described as raw, undeveloped at that point, and he was mostly doing covers, songs by other artists, his sound was already distinctive. People couldn't easily compare him to other big names like Jim Morrison, Robert Plant, or Ozzy Osbourne.
That's a big deal, finding your own sound. It's what separates an artist, makes them stand out.
No doubt about it. And the book even quotes the guitarist, Johnny Pacolis, saying Layne had his own thing. And I think that's what was the most appealing about him. He had a very distinctive voice. We weren't looking for another Morrison or another Rob Halford. We weren't looking for that. I don't know what we were looking for. We just found it. I mean, that's a pretty powerful statement about how unique he sounded, even early on.
It really shows how much of an impression he made right from the start. They weren't looking for a copycat. They were looking for something original, and they found it in Layne.
So true. But, in those early days with Sleaze, who later changed their name to Alice in Chains with an N in the middle, well, by the way, Layne was still very much learning the ropes. Ron Holt, who later played bass with them in a project called 40 Years of Hate, he remembered that Layne didn't know anything about songcrafting. He didn't know anything about dynamics. He was really just shouting against the music. And when we talk about dynamics in music, we're talking about those shifts in volume and intensity.
It's like he had this amazing instrument, his voice, but he was still figuring out how to use it effectively within a song, how to control those different elements of his singing.
Precisely. Holt even said their songs had a basic structure, but they weren't fully formed. It was more about that raw energy, the loudness. But the key thing is that Layne recognized this, and he took steps to improve.
And this is where those vocal lessons come in.
Yeah.
They were instrumental in helping him hone his skills.
Absolutely. The book talks about how Layne started taking singing lessons. One of his teachers would even make copies of the lesson tape so he could practice at home. And after about 6 months of consistent practice, he reached a point where the notes, as the book puts it, just flowed out effortlessly. Talk about the power of dedicated practice.
It's not just about technique either. It's about building confidence, mastering control over your instrument, which in this case was his voice. And the book even mentions that all this practice helped them save money later on in the studio because Layne was just that much more prepared.
Makes perfect sense, right? The more you practice, the less time and money you need to spend fine-tuning things in the studio. And later on, Layne actually went on to study with a really renowned vocal coach, David Kyle.
Oh, yeah, David Kyle. He's worked with some serious talent. Jeff Tate from Queensrÿche, Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, Ann Wilson from Heart, Ronnie Monroe from Metal Church. I mean, that's a pretty impressive roster of vocalists.
It's amazing the number of incredible singers he's coached. And there's even this anecdote in the book. Robert Lunte, who was a student of Kyle's and now runs his own vocal studio in Seattle, he remembers seeing a picture of Layne at Kyle's studio. And Kyle himself confirmed that Layne had been one of his students. So Layne was really seeking out the best of the best.
It speaks volumes about his dedication, his desire to refine his craft and learn from a true master. He wasn't just relying on natural ability, he was actively seeking out knowledge and understanding of how his voice worked.
You got it. And despite those early struggles, even admitting that he was horrible at first, Layne never gave up. He even said, after that whole fight with the drummer, that he went home and started practicing. I was horrible at first, but I found my instrument. I mean, what a powerful way to describe finding your voice, right?
Absolutely. It's about that journey, the hard work, the persistence, until he discovered his own unique way of expressing himself through music. He didn't let those initial setbacks define him. He kept going, and he found his own voice.
And so, from that early Elton John concert, to exploring different instruments, to finally embracing the microphone, Layne's journey to becoming a legendary vocalist was one of sheer dedication, self-belief, and the support of some pretty influential mentors. His voice, that signature sound that's touched so many people through Alice in Chains' music, it was truly forged through his own effort and the guidance he received along the way.
It's a great example of how passion, persistence, and a willingness to learn can lead to incredible things.
And for all of you out there, especially those of you learning English with the English with Narayana channel, what do you think was the most crucial factor in Layne Staley's journey to finding his voice? Was it that early exposure to Elton John? Was it the moment he decided to swap those drums for a mic? Or was it the formal training he received from those renowned vocal coaches? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop your answers in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going.
And hey, thinking about these questions and putting your answers into words, that's great English practice too.
Exactly. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into how Layne Staley learned to sing, and you're eager to explore more topics like this music, language, whatever catches your interest, all while sharpening your English skills, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We release new deep dives regularly, so you'll always have something new to listen to and learn from. It's a fantastic way to boost your English comprehension and expand your knowledge at the same time. Seriously, learning English with podcasts like this one, it's a game changer.
Subscribing helps us out too. It lets us know what you enjoy and allows us to keep creating content that you find valuable.
So, from both of us, a huge thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. We sincerely hope you found this exploration of Layne Staley's vocal journey insightful and maybe even helpful for your English learning.
It was a pleasure sharing this story with you. We hope you keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those minds engaged.
Until next time, take care.